Bill is giving his fourth son Gabe a haircut. He has 5 sons and 2 daughters. From birth to hairstyles, everything has been crafted by Bill himself. Since he can remember, his father has been responsible for all the children's haircuts. It seems to have become a tradition in their family. When asked, Gabe still wants a 1,950 seconds punk style, similar to Elvis Presley's look, which has always been his favorite. It's early autumn in southeastern Alaska, also the season of harvest. Ami plans to collect all the vegetables from the small garden for storage. These vegetables, grown without pesticides or chemical fertilizers, are small in size but have an absolutely top-notch taste. At the same time, Bill takes the children to clear weeds around the cabin. This is the time when brown bears are voraciously eating before hibernation. If there are bears around their home, Bill hopes to see them early, rather than having one jump out from nearby bushes when they approach. The family has lived in the wilderness of Alaska for over 30 years. Although they occasionally go into town for shopping, it's only to meet the most basic needs. They don't know any celebrity players or anything related to entertainment. Living in the jungle year-round has given this isolated family a unique outlook on life. Yet, at the same time, the children receive homeschooling from their mother, Ami. Despite living in remote mountains, they have mastered various modern knowledge. This seems contradictory but also perfectly reasonable. In the past few months, the family hasn't been very content. During the last freight trip, their eldest son, Matt, left the family in the hopeful spring due to his alcohol addiction, seeking psychological treatment. For months, he worked hard not to let his family down and finally kept his promise, returning to his family's embrace during this harvest season. Perhaps everyone has moments of confusion and wandering, but finding oneself after being lost is the most valuable thing. When the family gets back on track, Bill starts figuring out how to solve the food problem. First, he retrieves the unused crab traps and goes to a bay with Gabe. Normally, when Bill starts catching crabs for food, it means their supplies are running low. Lately, there have been more and more fishing boats around Kichigof Island, so their access to resources is dwindling. After returning home, Bill immediately gathers the whole family for a meeting. He wants to rely less on the outside world, as that gives him a sense of security. So, Bill buys a cow from a friend of a friend. When they hear the news, everyone except the dog named Cupcake is thrilled. After all, fresh milk has always been a distant luxury for this family. Now they face the challenges of transporting the cow back and raising it. Meanwhile, Matt asks his father for permission to go hunting alone. He hopes to bring back a deer to help the family through winter. Since quitting alcohol, Matt has been making fewer foolish mistakes and has become more thoughtful. He hopes to heal himself through this action and wants his family to trust him again. He needs to prove that he is indeed a reliable person. After the family meeting, Gabe and Bear immediately start preparing the animal enclosure. But Bear, who was diligently sawing wood, is stopped by Gabe.
Bear, stop.
He saw a brown bear walking through the jungle. Although separated by bushes, the distance between them was less than 10 meters. For brown bears, which are protected creatures, they cannot be hunted unless one's life is threatened. Additionally, having lived in the jungle for years, the Bill family also loves animals very much. Apart from necessary hunting for survival, they do not want to take away any animal's life. Meanwhile, Matt bid farewell to his mother and embarked on his journey to hunt deer. Although there was no precedent in the Brown family for going into the mountains alone to hunt, Matt needed to independently complete this redemption. While Matt went into the mountains, Bill also modified the raft with his children. This raft was specially made to transport Todd's off-road vehicle, and now it finally came in handy. After a simple modification, Bill set off with his children. However, soon Bill heard news of a storm on his radio. For the Brown family, this was the first time they were split into 3 parts. Noah and Gabe, the 2 youngest sons, were at home clearing an open space to prepare an animal enclosure. Between them, Gabe was the strength type, while Noah was the intelligence type. The eldest brother, Matt, went into the mountains alone, determined to bring back a deer. This time, he was resolute not to return empty-handed. Once, his alcoholism had hurt and disappointed his family, but this time he would not. Matt firmly decided to bring back game and soon saw deer tracks. However, It was evident that his skill in imitating deer calls with grass still needed improvement. Meanwhile, Bill, with Bear and Bam, sailed directly into the eye of the storm. They had heard about the storm forming on the radio, but did not expect it to be so fierce. After all, even the wise make mistakes. For Bill, this was also the first time he had misjudged the situation. Faced with such fierce waves, even if the cow was loaded onto the raft, it might fall into the sea. Therefore, for safety reasons, Bill decided to drop anchor and spend the night in this bay. The storm also hit the areas around Kichigof Island. Matt searched in the jungle all day, seeing many deer tracks and droppings, but not even half a deer. In the wind and rain of the night, he had no choice but to set up a temporary tent to stay overnight. Relatively at ease was Gabe at the Brown camp. On this stormy night, Mother Ami told Gabe about the story of the mustard candle. It was about when Ami and Bill first arrived in Alaska. They had no supplies. Then, clever and exceptionally intelligent, Ami used her ingenuity to make candles out of mustard sauce, bringing light to her family. Gabe had heard this story countless times and made these candles many times over. Yet, for some reason, he never got tired of his mother's stories. He really wanted to listen forever. With the arrival of the next day, birds in the forest woke the sleeping people. Matt, who had spent the night in anxiety, looked at the giant tree blown down in front of him and sincerely admired the power of nature. Similarly, at the Brown Camp beach, a large tree beside the small cabin was also blown down. Due to the moist soil on the beach, old trees are more susceptible to storms. This large tree fell right beside Gabe's small cabin. Poor this dilapidated little cabin, which the family had worked hard to pull back from the Hoona Beach. Not even a day had been spent living in it before it was ruined. Not only that, but they also faced another problem. They had to dismantle it. Because the planks of the small hut were still supporting the thick trunk, no one knew when it would collapse. They had to eliminate any danger in the camp. However, at the moment, it seemed that these two brothers' strength was insufficient to dismantle it in a short time. On the other side, after spending the night in the bay, Bill successfully reached the town of Homer and obtained a cow from a friend's house. From now on, it would be one of the family's providers. It didn't take much effort to secure the cow onto the raft. Then, amidst the cow's terrified cries, Bill set sail for home with his sons. Although they had added forage to the cow's raft, at this moment, how could it be in the mood to eat? After all, this was its first time on a boat, scaring the poor calf. Back at the Brown camp, after all the Joden, the two brothers exhausted all their strength but still couldn't dismantle the small cabin. With no other choice, Noah finally took out his long-cherished treasure.
Aha! You can see the hole!
You're doing it, man. You're doing it.
After 5 hours of sailing, Bill finally brought the cow home safely. It was another living asset the family had acquired. Once the cow was led into the animal enclosure, Rain couldn't resist kissing its face. Why does this child kiss everyone she meets? Finally, the whole family pitched in to help Gabe dismantle the ruined small cabin. While the old man had already transported all the cows home, Matt in the jungle still had nothing in his hands. After eating some raw mushrooms in the morning, he felt a bit unwell. After all, his body needed protein, but it must be said, Matt's fishing skills were quite impressive. In no time, he managed to catch a big fish. Grilled over the fire, it smelled absolutely delicious. After breakfast, Matt continued tracking the deer herd. The stripped bark of this small pine tree was caused by deer antlers. Upon inspection, the tracks were very fresh, so Matt crouched in place and blew his deer whistle again. Along this path yesterday, he kept seeing signs left by deer but couldn't find the herd. But today, luck seemed to favor Matt. After a crisp sound, Matt clearly saw he had hit his target. This meant he had finally ended this difficult hunt and could go home. His parents had always instilled in him the lesson to never lose hope. Now, though the process was tough, he had ultimately achieved his wish. Over the years, he had hunted many times with his father, Bill. Though Matt didn't have standout strengths, he was rich in jungle experience and the most balanced in ability. After a simple processing, Matt dragged his prey away. Soon, a brown bear followed the scent to where Matt had killed the deer and accepted his generous gift without hesitation, all while Matt was only a few hundred meters away. After finishing its meal, the bear followed the blood trail left on the bear path, while Matt remained oblivious to what was happening behind him. To him, the discarded entrails were now over 800 meters away. To avoid being tracked by the bear, he unfolded the tarp to wrap around the prey. The smooth tarp also made it easier for him to drag the animal through the jungle. But things often weren't as simple as imagined. Matt didn't have Gabe's strong physique. He struggled to drag the 100-pound deer through the forest, exhausting himself. But every subtle sound around him was a reminder that bears were nearby. Realizing something was wrong, Matt dropped the prey and scouted the area. That night, light rain fell again in the jungle. Matt had to remove the tarp and set up a temporary tent again, hanging the deer to dry. Just as he started a fire using the deer's fat and his own shirt, the brown bear that had been following him all day arrived at his campsite. Finally, with a signal flare and loud shouts, he managed to scare it away. But a good night's sleep would be hard to come by. The next afternoon, Matt, exhausted, finally returned to the brown camp. Bear was the first to spot him and helped drag the prey back. For Matt, the sense of accomplishment from a successful hunt was worth it. He had earned his family's approval. In his own words, he had spent half his life avoiding responsibility or giving up halfway, but after the last incident, he had completely changed. When the family gathered around the fire for a dinner of fresh venison, all its members once again stood united. As long as they wanted to do something, they could do it. This was Bear's morning routine. It was said that rolling on the ground once made the collected eggs taste better. Meanwhile, Snowbird brought Bear a frying pan for scrambled eggs, which would be their breakfast. The night before, the two siblings had stayed up all night outside the cow pen. This cow, named Sabrina, was a new member of the Bill family. To prevent it from being eaten by a brown bear, they had spent the whole night on guard. After breakfast, Bear had no intention of sleeping. He went into the mountains with his youngest sister, Rain, to pick some berries. These red and purple berries would become Bear's paint to decorate his little tree. Red was Bear's favorite color. To make the color more intense and sticky, Bear added some reddish soil. After 59,873 fengquanda dalso and jerho, Rain helped him make a brush out of moss. The originally clean wooden wall became unsightly, but none of that mattered. Bear liked it himself. Meanwhile, Gabe and Snowbird were giving the cow a bath. After all, this creature ate grass and produced milk. It deserved better treatment. But the cow had never experienced this before and feared it might be slaughtered. Amid the cow's fearful cries, Gabe spotted a brown bear nearby. As expected, these creatures had set their sights on it. To avoid provoking this giant, Gabe and Bam slowly took defensive positions with their guns, while Snowbird calmed the frightened cow. Finally, after Bam fired a warning shot, the brown bear reluctantly left the cow pen. Bam then believed that some scent from the cow might have attracted the bear. After discussion, the family decided to build an iron-plated cowshed to protect against bears. Under Bill's insistence, the shed needed to be at least 4 by 5 meters in size. Meanwhile, with the addition of Sabrina, the Brown family now had over 10 liters of milk daily, far more than they could consume. So Ami sought Noah's help to make a butter churner to turn the excess milk into butter. Considering that Noah had previously built an automatic washing machine which worked on similar principles, he immediately came up with an idea. Soon, Bill and Ami enjoyed the butter churner at home. Though we couldn't see the internal structure, one could imagine a tiny fist pounding inside the barrel. Regardless, when the results appeared, Bill and Ami were very satisfied with the machine. Thanks to Noah, our bread tastes even sweeter. On the other side, Gabe and Snowbird began building the cowshed. Bill had originally assigned Gabe to oversee the project, but he had always been just an executor. He had no experience with planning. When Bam reminded him to calculate the number of iron tiles in advance to plan the dimensions, Gabe impulsively jumped into the construction work without hesitation. What calculations? Doing things on the fly was his favorite approach. Thus, The conflict between Bam and Gabe remained. Bam disapproved of Gabe's haphazard work, while Gabe believed that taking too long meant accomplishing nothing. Fortunately, Snowbird's mediation kept the brothers from arguing further, barely containing Bam's desire to be in charge. Under Gabe's aimless leadership, progress naturally fell behind. By nightfall, the shed still wasn't finished. Deflated, Gabe took responsibility and stayed up alone by the cow pen. Fortunately, Snowbird brought him some fresh butter made by his parents, a thoughtful gesture that warmed Gabe's heart. For a long time, the two youngest sisters had been doted on by their brothers. Now that they were older, they also looked after their brothers, eating the bread his sister baked. I fully believe in its deliciousness. The next day, the three siblings finally gave the cow a new home. After 2 sleepless nights, Snowbird could finally rest easy. As the temperature drops, the entire Brown family is preparing for winter. The brothers are busy smoking meat, feeding cows, cutting wood, and refueling. When Gabe saw that 9 large barrels of oil had been consumed in just 5 days, he was stunned. At this rate, their family would practically become partners with an oil company. Though local oil prices are quite cheap, they couldn't afford to waste it like this. So Bill immediately started planning a big project: wind power. For centuries, Alaskan residents have used wind power to meet electricity needs in areas beyond the grid coverage. Currently, the Brown camp relies on a gasoline motor for electricity. The high fuel consumption is one thing, but in cold winter, going into town to refuel is what Bill least wants to do. If Noah could handle this, then it would become the biggest project at the Brown camp. Right away, the father and son started sketching and researching models. Given the wind conditions on their island, a height of about 8 meters would meet the wind power requirements. Then, the family conducted a field inspection. Their island faces a wind tunnel where gusts can reach over 100 kilometers per hour. So, all they needed to do was build a sturdy enough foundation at this spot. Next, Bill began contacting everywhere he could think of to find affordable wind power equipment. At the same time, he sent Matt and Bam to Homer's junkyard to try their luck. At the junkyard, Matt ran into his buddy Kenny, which inevitably led to a wild time.
Yeah, he's tagging it. See, this is what he gets to do when he comes to town.
Seriously?
No, I'm not real keen on going to the dump.
Although they didn't find anything related to wind power, following the principle of not returning empty-handed, Matt still brought back some other materials. Meanwhile, Bill took Gabe into the mountains to find several thick and straight logs. He needed 3 such trees to make a triangular bracket. According to the estimated size, they just needed to be at least 8 meters tall. After finding the required logs, they also needed to dig several large holes in the ground. Only a sturdy base could withstand strong winds. Based on Noah's calculations, they needed holes at least 1 meter deep at the bottom. But halfway through digging, they hit a huge rock blocking the bottom. This spot was carefully chosen by the family, directly facing the wind tunnel. The perfect location. Bill didn't want to give up easily, but without heavy machinery, they could only think of one solution. Since this was a direction Bear was more interested in, Bill assigned him the task. After consulting Noah, Bear lived up to expectations and made a big firecracker. No one knew how powerful it was yet, but it certainly looked intimidating. After a loud explosion, it was unclear whether it worked, but the brothers quickly dug the hole deep enough. Though they still had no leads on wind turbine equipment, Bill decided to set up the tripod first. Then, using winches, they pulled the 3 logs to the base position and secured them in place on the ground. Next, they used winches again to raise the spread-out tripod. Since the logs hadn't been dried, the frame looked light but was actually quite heavy. The whole process seemed dangerous, but was actually unsafe. It could easily fall over and break a leg without much trouble. But the Bills had a spirit of knowingly facing danger head-on. With their excellent skills and steady hands, they perfectly erected the tripod. Now it was time to test Bill's connections. As long as they could get a set of equipment, everyone would know how sweet renewable energy could be. While Bill worked with Noah on wind power, Matt returned from the junkyard and reported to his father that they hadn't found anything useful there. But he brought back a pile of scrap, planning to build a homemade board processing machine. At least the brothers could make their own lumber for building houses. Bill loved the idea. His smile stretched from ear to ear. Regardless of the outcome, just having the idea was already great. In fact, Matt was surprisingly meticulous. He carefully recalled their past struggles. Most of their time was spent searching for wood, whether hauling logs, bartering, or tearing off roofs. The goal was always wood, so if they could produce their own lumber, it would save them a lot of trouble. Matt's plan was to use a broken motorcycle engine for power and repurpose garage door parts from the junkyard as tracks. After some simple repairs and an oil change, the old engine surprisingly roared back to life. No one knew why its original owner discarded it. Then Bam helped Matt build a track with wood and garage door slides, placing a metal plate on top as a platform for the saw. They mounted the motorcycle onto the platform, using wheels and other pulleys to assist the saw blade's rotation. The device was now basically complete. All that was left was to install the saw blade for the first test. But this thing was too dangerous. Kids, don't try this at home. As the engine sputtered to a halt, the first test only cut less than 10 centimeters into the wood. After a simple adjustment, Matt tried again. After another failure, Bam promptly began his persuasion. After all, it was made from parts salvaged from the garbage heap, so they should stop these futile efforts and do something more meaningful. But Matt insisted that he had already made some progress and just needed to refine it further. He didn't let Bam's negative attitude affect him. Instead, he remained firm in his determination to find out why the blade came off and improve it. The next day, after a night of contemplation, Matt sought out Bam for the third test. As the first plank fell off, it meant they had succeeded. Soon, the two brothers couldn't wait to call Bill and the other brothers to demonstrate in front of everyone. Haha. Seeing this scene, everyone was delighted. Who would have thought that just a few months ago, they were running around everywhere just to get a little wood, and now they could make their own boards. While the brothers were busy with construction, Noah was hiding in the room, working on his relationship with his girlfriend. The girl's name was Rain Alicia. Noah met her at the docks in Hona. It turns out, whether you're a muscular man or a naturally handsome guy, you're nothing compared to a true gentleman. Noah's respect and sincerity were light years ahead of Bear's attempt to ask a girl to climb trees. Now he was writing a letter to his girlfriend and reading it out loud to the camera.
Greetings, Rain Alicia. It has been so wonderful to get to know you that I can hardly wait to see you again. So I would like to invite you out to my property to experience the real Alaskan adventure that you've been looking for. Until I see you again, Noah.
To everyone's surprise, Noah managed to invite the girl to the island. With his terrible handwriting and a short letter, not only could they go on a date, but she could also help correct the Brown family's arrogant and unruly accent.
Similar.
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 Although Alicia didn't grow up in Alaska, she loved the jungle. She appreciated every little thing Noah did for her, and she didn't want any luxuries either. Having a tent, woods, and a stream was her ultimate pursuit. So Noah and her were a classic case of one not having, and the other not wanting either. It was this simple kind of happiness that they cherished the most. At the same time, Noah's clumsy Tai Chi made Alicia admire him even more. When Alicia wanted to learn Tai Chi from Noah, the opportunity couldn't have come at a better time. You know what? He actually pulled it off. On the other side, Bear took time to windproof his small cabin. The wrestling mats he had brought back from Pelican were now put to great use. Meanwhile, Bam cleared a piece of wasteland over there. When Bill asked him about it, he said he wanted to build a 2-story house there. It wasn't that living in the trapping cabin was beneath him, but he wanted more private space. After all, the youngest, Noah, had already dated 2 or 3 times, while as the second oldest, he hadn't even held a girl's hand. Once he had his 2-story house, he'd feel more confident on dates. At the same time, Matt was processing a deer he had hunted earlier. While the brothers were busy with their own tasks, another uninvited guest arrived on their island. Paul had provided the Brown family with numerous shipping orders and other assistance. Last spring, he even used a barter system with Bill to lend them a brand new small boat. Now, as the agreed-upon time drew near, Paul came to the island to find Bill. He first asked Bill if he was satisfied with the boat. After receiving a positive response, Paul proposed his solution. If Bill was willing to complete 2 more shipping orders for him, he could gain permanent ownership of the boat. The offer immediately piqued Bill's interest. He never dreamed something like this could happen. But he also realized that this shipment wouldn't be easy. First, they needed to haul 2 septic tanks to Port Alexander, which would take 24 hours. Then, they had to go to a bay on Prince of Wales Island to retrieve a friend's seaplane for repairs. But that area was open waters, full of unknown dangers. After a brief consideration, Bill figured that where there's a will, there's a way. He agreed to the deal right away. Although it involved some risks, the rewards would be substantial. Paul, you're the Brown family's money god. Paul's visit offered the Brown family a solution to permanently use the boat, but they had to leave the Brown camp and deliver goods to Prince of Wales Island, which would take them a week. Everything else was manageable, except for their newly purchased cow, Sabrina, which became the biggest issue. To prevent the cow from becoming a grizzly bear's dinner, Matt went straight to Huna's landfill to find Kenny and asked him to look after the cow for a week. Although this guy didn't seem very reliable, when it came to getting things done, they were actually more dependable than anyone else. Meanwhile, Snowbird taught him how to milk the cow, so he'd have breakfast sorted out every day. Their mission this time was to tow 2 plastic septic tanks to Port Alexander, 200 kilometers away, and then to Thorn Bay to retrieve a seaplane for repairs. Thorn Bay was near Prince of Wales Island, a place the Bill family was familiar with, since they had lived there for a while. It held childhood memories for all the kids. Soon, the family was ready, and after 3 hours of sailing, they arrived at their first stop, Huna. There, at Huna's port, they loaded 2 septic tanks weighing over 150 kilograms each onto the Sincere. Since Huna's port facilities were well equipped, the brothers barely had to do anything during loading, but they let us down when it mattered most. Almost seemed like a Brown family tradition. Although the Sincere's lower deck smoking looked serious, it was actually caused by 2 wires, short-circuiting positive and negative terminals, which also burned out the battery. Fortunately, Noah was on board. Otherwise, no one knew what this family would do. Meanwhile, Kenny was doing an excellent job, taking care of the Brown family's big cow, shoveling manure in the cowshed with great diligence. Turns out, this guy was reliable. When there was shit to shovel, he really did it. After a long day's journey, the Sincere finally reached Port Alexander after dark. Located at the southeastern tip of Alaska, Port Alexander was a civilized place, with a permanent population of only 57 people. After staying overnight, they met their client, Leanne. For Leanne and Sarah, who hadn't used a flush toilet in 5 years, the arrival of these 2 septic tanks, I couldn't have been more timely. In the light rain, the brothers delivered the septic tanks to Leanne's house. Without lingering, immediately turning to the next task,